I'm in school. I believe I'm at Long Beach State in April of that year. Semester's coming to an end. Everybody's talking about this movie that is a drug trip. So the word around campus, or at least around my circles, and I'm a teetotaler. Never done any of that at all. But I smoked cigarettes for a year. That was the worst thing I did in college.
For 1 year?
Yeah, I quit 1 year, and I quit. But everybody was talking about this kind of like Roger Corman's The Trip. And so the scuttlebutt on campus was, this is trippy. This is going to be like The Trip. This is going to be like a really trippy film. So everybody was getting ready to get into a car and go down to, I believe it was the Pantages Theater, to see the film. So I think I saw the film probably the first week it opened. And I went with 3 or 4 of my college friends. We all piled into a car, drove into Hollywood. And correct me if I'm wrong, it might have been the Pantages. It might have been another one of those big movie palaces in 1968. But we walked like 9 blocks to get to the theater. Got into a line because in those days, there was no such thing as buying your tickets ahead of time. And so we waited in line for a long time, and everybody was I looked around, nobody was smoking grass because there were cops up and down Hollywood Boulevard. But when I walked into that theater and people started filling it up, it was filled with smoke. It was just filled with smoke. I had never been to a movie where I smelled marijuana as thick as a London fog inside that movie palace. But everybody was in the theater, a lot of guys, not as many women, more men, everybody with long hair, everybody making a lot of noise. I thought I wouldn't be able to hear the dialogue. First of all, I didn't realize, because the movie hadn't started yet, there was going to be very little dialogue. But it didn't matter. I was worried that there wasn't going to be room to hear the dialogue because everybody's making so much noise in the theater. And then when the movie started, and Thus Spoke Zarathustra started, and it hits that tremendous chord, it shut everybody the F up. Everyone just got completely quiet. So as the music was decaying after that big explosive chord, I was aware that everyone was still. It was kind of, in itself, before the film started, mind-blowing. And then what began, I think, for a lot of people in that theater was a religious experience, fueled by whatever they were on. For me, it was not so much a religious experience, but one of the most audacious films I had ever watched in my life. The audacity, and of course, we all knew Kubrick, and we all knew he was audacious, but the audacity and the risks he took telling that story, if you could even call it a story, set me back. And I think, just rocked my world for sure. I'm watching the movie completely in a state of intoxication, because Stanley intoxicated me. Or perhaps I was getting a contact high with all the smoke in the room. But I was completely intoxicated by what I experienced. And it wasn't a film, it was an experience. It was the most experiential thing I had ever seen since I was a little kid and got scared to death by The Greatest Show on Earth. Also, you have to remember how big the screen was. The screen was so big, the person in the theater, several people in the theater got up and started walking into the screen. And that was, by the way, you can probably look it up in the LA Times. It was reported that people were walking into the screen. In those days, at least in that theater, the screens were like louvers. They were vertical strips of reflective material. Everybody I saw the movie with that day were all probably under 35 years old. So I don't know anyone that I was unaware of it. Look, half the audience could have walked out and I would not have noticed.
Right.
I looked dead center, dead left to center, dead right of center, because that was my field of vision. And I was completely, I was completely magnetized by what was happening. Absolutely repeated viewings. I mean, I've seen 2001 countless times. I can't tell you how many times I sat there beginning to end, when I finally saw it for the first time in 70 millimeter in New York City in 2001, when it was reissued on that special year. But I can watch it over and over again, and I don't claim to have understood it metaphysically or philosophically or even completely when I first saw it, but it kept bringing me back, and the layers continued to expose themselves to me. And with 2001: A Space Odyssey, he was also a wizard technologically. He was almost an engineer. His mind had a kind of OCD quality where when he focused in on something, he was doing it for himself, and we were the beneficiaries of whatever reason. He was creating these incredibly advanced spacecraft that no one had ever seen before in anybody else's films. Those spacecraft alone were kind of works of art, I always felt. And those spacecraft, especially the Jupiter mission craft, is what inspired Ralph McQuarrie and myself to create the mothership in Close Encounters. Inspired George Lucas with the Imperial Starship Destroyer.
Yeah,
and included and certainly inspired Ridley Scott in creating the space freighter Nostromo. These wouldn't have existed unless Stanley had come first. He was really, really concerned about machine learning and machines teaching machines to teach machines. And that was that was I think the main link between 2001 and his version of AI. But I mean Stanley Kubrick with 2001 created, I think, the first 3D experience. The first, not 3D in terms of of interocular, but I'm talking about wraparound, three-dimensional sight and sound. And even though the screen did have its boundaries and you could look off the screen, top, bottom, left, right, it didn't matter because it had enough of a fold around the audience that the audience was really enwrapped and by the experience. And 2001 was the perfect film for it. And also, 2001 also does something with suspense. The middle part of that film is as suspenseful as anything Alfred Hitchcock ever made. I feel that film is the most suspenseful movie Stanley ever made. But the thing about the picture is, the movie it's an anti-emotional film that's truly a deeply empathic picture, but it's kind of anti-emotional.